Hello and welcome to Super Great Kids Stories, wise tales from storytellers around the world which will make you laugh and sometimes cry. Recommended for ages 5 to 105. I'm Kim and I love stories. And the story this week is The Slippers That Make No Noise, a Cinderella-style fairy tale from China. Hello, Super Great Kids, and how are you? I'm very happy because it's February, the days are getting longer here in the Northern Hemisphere, and we get to share a Chinese love story with you for Valentine's Day. I'm also going to mark the end of the Lunar New Year and celebrate the Lantern Festival in London by floating a lantern on a canal and thinking about new beginnings and hope. Just before we get to our story, which is a very old Chinese version of Cinderella, let's talk about Cinderella's slippers. In the many different versions of Cinderella around the world, and there are over 1,000, the slippers are made of all sorts of different materials. Can you tell me what kind of slippers you'd have if you were telling your own version of this story? In the French version, which you may know, the slippers are made of glass. And in an Irish version, they're made of green silk. And in a Scottish version, they're made of blue ram's wool, nice and warm. In Egypt, they're made of rose gold. And in this Chinese version, which we're about to hear, the slippers are golden and they make no noise. Have a think about what your Cinderella slippers would be made from while we have a quick word with the grown-ups. Hello, Super Great Kids, I'm back. Did you decide what kind of slippers you'd give your Cinderella? Mine would be super warm and very soft. And now, it's time to begin our story, which this week is told by me, The Slippers That Make No Noise. Are you sitting comfortably? Am I sitting comfortably? Then let the story begin. Are you ready? Mouth open, story, jump out. A long time ago, when the world was full of wonders, there lived a lovely young girl called Yeh-Hsien. Her skin was smooth as silk and her hair was black and shone like the night sky. Her father had 2 wives, and each wife had a baby girl. But I'm sorry to have to tell you that Yeh-Hsien's mother died, and then her father died, and she was left alone with her stepmother and her stepsister. And as in so many fairy tales, Yeh-Hsien's stepmother was mean as a bean, and her stepsister was the same, with a face so sour she could curdle cream. Both mother and daughter were very jealous of Yeh-Hsien's good looks and treated her like a servant.
Yeh-Hsien, fetch me the water. Yeh-Hsien, scrub the pots. Yeh-Hsien, make the rice.
Poor Yeh-Hsien. She never had enough food and often went to bed with her tummy rumbling. One day, while fetching water from the mountain stream, she saw a flash of gold and spotted a small golden fish with a flamboyant tail. The fish lay its head on the bank of the stream and looked up at Yeh-Hsien. "Hello, little fish. Are you hungry too? Here, have some of my bread." And she scattered a few precious crumbs over the water. The fish darted up and down, and in no time every little crumb had vanished. "You were hungry," cried the girl, and from that day on she'd return to feed the little fish. When she arrived, she'd sing her little song. "Little fish with golden eyes, come and have a nice surprise. Golden fish with golden eyes, come and talk to me." and with a flick of its tail, it would rest its head on the bank of the stream, while Yeh-Hsien told the fish all about her life, about her mean stepmother and her even meaner stepsister. And each day the little fish grew bigger and bigger. One day Yeh-Hsien's stepsister grew curious. What was her stupid sister doing at the stream all morning? Surely it didn't take that long to fetch the water. And she secretly followed her up the mountain.
Mummy, 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 you'll never guess what Yeh-Hsien is doing. She is feeding our precious bread to a silly fish, and she's singing to it. Yes, singing to it.
She's doing what? Said the stepmother.
Yes, Mummy, she sings to a big gold fish. Golden fish with golden eyes, come and have a nice surprise. Little fish with golden eyes, come and talk to me. And then she feeds our bread to it.
Does she indeed? Well, I'll give that golden fish a nice surprise. Ha ha ha! Golden fish stew. That does sound delicious.
Shall we have fish stew tonight for dinner, my little dumpling?
Said the mother, and the mother and daughter licked their lips. That very afternoon, the stepmother took a fishing net up to the mountain stream and started to sing.
Golden fish with golden eyes, come and have a nice surprise. Little fish with golden eyes, come and talk to me.
The water bubbled. There was a flash of gold, and ploop! The fish was lying on the bank. In a flash, the stepmother had scooped the fish off the bank and hurled it into her net. It gasped, it twisted in the net, but it was no use. The stepmother held her net up high as she ran down the mountain towards her kitchen in the cave, where a pot of water was already on the boil. When Yeh-Hsien came in from the fields that night, her stepmother was stirring a delicious fish stew.
Ah, Yeh-Hsien, where have you been? Look what I caught, a beautiful golden fish out of the stream this afternoon. And now me and your sister are going to sit down and finish the lot. Would you like to share a few drops as a special treat?
Yeh-Hsien turned pale and ran straight out to the stream. She knelt down on the bank and sang gently to her friend. Little fish with golden eyes, come and have a nice surprise. Golden fish with golden eyes, come and talk to me. She stopped. She waited. She listened. But do you think that fish appeared? Why, of course. No fish came. Hot tears slid down Yeh-Hsien's cheeks and into the water. "Oh, little fish, I'm so sorry," she called in a voice trembling with sadness. "I'm so sorry." "Don't worry," said a voice next to her. She looked up, amazed, to see an old man dressed in a long white robe standing right by the stream. "Don't worry, Yeh-Hsien. Your friend the fish has gone, but its magical powers are still strong. Don't spend too much time thinking about what you can't change. Go home, gather its bones, and keep them under your bed. They're filled with magic, so if ever you need help, the bones will grant your wishes. Now be brave, Yeh-Hsien. Off you go and collect those precious bones." The girl bowed her head. "Thank you," she said. But when she looked up, plumph, the man had gone. She ran home to find her stepmother and stepsister snoring on their beds, their bowls still on the table waiting to be cleared. Quickly, she washed the bones and placed them carefully in a little pot which she hid under her bed. The weeks passed, And the months passed, and soon it was time to celebrate the spring festival. Such a lot of cooking and cleaning and sewing for Yeh-Hsien. Red lanterns were threaded along the streets like a necklace of rubies, and paper decorations were hung in every home. Later that day, everyone would go into the village to watch the fireworks, and all the young people would be dressed in their finest silk, hoping to meet the love of their life.
Yeh-Hsien, come and help me into my magnificent dress,
called Yeh-Hsien's stepsister while she gobbled down a plate of dumplings.
Oh, do hurry up, you useless lump,
shouted her sister while Yeh-Hsien struggled to help her into a very tight pink silk dress, which Yeh-Hsien couldn't help thinking made her look more like a lumpy caterpillar than a bride-to-be.
Oh, my little dumpling, you look scrumdiddly-umptious,
cooed her mother, fastening an oversized bow to hide her rather large bottom.
Almost as beautiful as I looked at your age. Every young man in the village is simply going to be tripping over their feet to talk to you.
Could I go too once I finished my chores? Pleaded Yeh-Hsien.
No, 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 absolutely not. Nopety, nopety, nope. We don't want you getting in the way of my little cherry blossoms, Prince. Now, get back to the sink and be sure to prepare a top-class meal for us when we get home. Go on, shoo, be off with you.
And the mother and daughter pranced out of the house in a swish of silk and a rattle of pearls. Oh, how I wish I could go and watch the fireworks, sighed Yeh-Hsien, watching as they made their way down the path. And then she remembered something. Do you know what she remembered? That's right, the pot of beautiful, delicate bones underneath her bed. She dashed upstairs and knelt at the foot of the bed. Please, please, my little fish, could you make it possible for me to go and watch the fireworks at the festival without people laughing at me in my shabby old clothes? She watched. She waited. She hoped. But nothing. She drew out the little pot and held it tight. Please, little fish, please, if it's possible, and you can work magic, do you think I could have some party clothes? She stopped. She waited. She hoped. But nothing. Very slowly, she took a deep breath, looked down, and opened her eyes. And ting! She gasped. She was dressed in a robe of midnight blue with all the stars of the night shining upon it. And then, ting, ting, around her shoulders floated a long cloak of soft peacock feathers. And ting, 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 she felt a tingle at her toes, and on her feet were the most delicate tiny golden slippers woven together in a beautiful pattern, shining like the scales of a fish and with soles of solid gold. But when she skipped down the path, they were lighter than light, and her footsteps made no sound at all, so nobody would hear her coming. Thank you, she whispered into the night, as soundlessly she ran down the path towards the fireworks, which were exploding across the night sky. Lots of heads turned to steal a look at her when she arrived, but then, kaboom, kaplops, showers of silver stars fizzed across the sky, illuminating the upturned faces of everyone around her. Suddenly, a rocket lit up the faces of a mother and daughter standing nearby.
I say, Mother, who does that girl remind you of? Excuse me for staring, but you do look the spitting image of my sister. Don't you think, Mum? Look, doesn't she look like Yeh-Hsien?
Yeh-Hsien stared at her sister, horrified. Lightning fast, she bolted back down the mountain towards her house. But oh, calamity! In the darkness, she tripped on a root and lost one of her beautiful slippers. But she kept right on running down towards her house, too afraid to turn back for fear of being caught. When she arrived at her house, her clothes had turned back to rags, all except for the one remaining golden slipper. No matter, she was safe, and what an evening! She sighed as she tucked her slipper back under the bed and fell asleep, dreaming of skies full of rockets and stars. It wasn't long before that slipper was found. The very next morning, one of the king's guards, tidying up after the festivities, picked it up and stared. It was so small, so delicate, so exquisite, he felt sure it must belong to a very posh princess. And so he took it to the king, hoping for a reward. The king was spellbound. "What a lovely thing this is!" he exclaimed, examining the tiny shoe with rubies at the toes and such stunning embroidery. "We must find the owner. She'll be very upset to have lost it." He sent out his guards, determined to find the owner, secretly hoping that he might be able to meet her himself. The king's men rode here and there and everywhere, but no one had a foot dainty enough to fit the tiny slipper. The search for the owner went deep into the countryside, but nobody came forward to claim it. Then the king came up with a plan. He ordered that the slipper be put on display next to the road where it had been found. He hoped that in this way the owner might return to claim it. The young king and his guards hid themselves in a bush nearby and waited. All day they waited. There was a very long queue of women snaking up and down and all around, women eager to try on the slipper. But by the end of the day, although many had eagerly tried it on, no one had managed to fit that tiny slipper onto their foot. At midnight, when everyone else had returned to their warm beds, a small, ragged figure could be seen, making her way silently along the path under the light of the moon. Tip-toe, tip-tip-toe. And you know who it was, don't you? Of course! It was Yeh-Hsien, curious to see if it was her slipper which the king had found. Tip-toe, tip-tip-toe. Seeing her lost slipper glinting in the moonlight, she reached out joyfully to claim it. "Stop!" shouted a guard, thinking that this girl in rags was surely a thief come to steal such a valuable item. "Oh, please," said the girl, her heart thumping. "I can prove to you I am the owner, if you just let me try it on." The guard was just about to arrest her and take her back to the prison in the palace when the young king stepped forward. "Wait," he ordered. "Let go of that girl right now." He'd spotted her tiny feet. "Will you try it on?" he asked her gently. She nodded and slipped her foot into the slipper. Of course, it fitted beautifully. In a flash, she was clothed once again in the feathered gown with the sparkling dress with all the stars of the night sky upon it. And kaboom! In an instant, the young king knew that he'd found the girl he wanted to marry. He looked deep into her eyes, noticing how kind they were. Will you marry me?" he asked, getting down on one knee. "Yes," she whispered, blushing. "I will." Now, I know what you're thinking. What happened to her stepmother and her stepsister? Did Yeh-Hsien forgive them? Well, I'm sorry to have to tell you that on the very same evening that Yeh-Hsien sneaked out to try on the slipper, there was a freak hailstorm, and hailstones the size of rocks flew out of the sky and hit both the stepmother and stepsister, and neither of them have ever been seen since. But as for Yeh-Hsien and her king, well, there was a wonderful feast of dumplings and spring rolls, chicken and shrimp. And there were fireworks and dancing and music. And as far as I know, they're feasting and dancing still. That is my story. I heard it from a friend, and now I'm sharing it with you. Who will you tell it to? Well, what did you think about that story? It's over 1,000 years old, so older than the one many of us know, which was told in France, which was about 300 years ago. Can you think about what makes it different to the story that you know and what makes it similar? Maybe you could play Spot the Difference with your grown-ups. See how closely they were listening. And what did you think of the fairy godmother? A golden fish. We've heard a few versions of Cinderella from around the world here on Super Great Kids Stories. Can you remember any of the other fairy godmothers? And if you like the story of Cinderella, we've got a beautifully illustrated Cinderella-type story from Southern Africa, which is included in our Super Great Kids storybook, which is coming out later this year. Hurrah! More about that nearer the time. Now, lots of you have joined our Owlets Club, so it's time to dig deep into our bag of happies and fly around the world with Story Owl to say thank you and welcome to some new owlets. Hoo, 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 hoo. Let's begin in Seattle, in Washington, in the US, to say hello to Callan, who is 7, and Una, who is 4. Callan loves being able to listen to all the super great scary stories now that he's joined the Owlets Club. His favourite is The Men in Marble, and Una's favourite story is The Christmas Spiders from Germany. And flying south now towards Miami in sunny Florida, let's greet owlets Mella, who's 13, Lucine, who's 6, and Jazz, who is 2. Their favourite stories are Eggshell Soup from Ireland and The Hairy Toe. Their family is a blend of Armenian, Sicilian and Cuban. And they'd like to hear a story from Armenia one day. Good idea. I'll see what I can find. Let's spread our wings and fly across the Atlantic now to Ireland, which is full of storytellers, to say hello to 8-year-old Jane and 7-year-old Sally, who are from Dublin. They listen every night. Their favourite stories are the scary ones, The Velvet Ribbon and The Ghost of the Bloody Finger. And Sally sent us a brilliant drawing of Story Owl. Hoo, 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 hoo. Thank you for that, Sally. Story Owl is tickety-boo about it. And back to the US now to say hello to owlets in Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlie, who is 7, and her brother Gage, who is 4. Their favourite story is The Ghost of the Bloody Finger. Oh, very brave. And off to Idaho, in the snowy Teton Mountains next, to say hello to owlets Hayden, who is 6 and lives in Victor. Her favourite stories include The Nissa's New Suit and The Ghost of the Bloody Finger. She listens every night before bed. Let's head east now to Providence in Rhode Island to greet owlet Leo, who's been listening to Super Great Kids Stories for the last 3 years. That makes you a super fan, Leo. Leo loves all of the Anansi and Baba Yaga stories. Good choices. And he's recently been getting into the Super Great Scary Stories. Well done, you. I'm very pleased you're enjoying the stories as much as we do, Leo. And thank you for your kind note. And over to Bristol here in the UK now to say hello to Phoenix Rose, who is 9. Her favourite story is Eggshell Soup, told by Kate Corkery. Yes, that one makes me laugh every time I hear it. Phoenix Rose has been patiently waiting for me to say hello since her birthday back in October. Thanks very much for being so patient. I hope you enjoy this week's Valentine bonus for the owlets, the 3 ants. And a hoot hello to owlet Peter, who is 6. Peter and his mum drive for 45 minutes to get to school, and they listen to stories while they're in the car. Peter loves all of the stories and finds it hard to pick a favourite, but his mum says she loves the Anansi stories the best, and any story told by Toop. Across to Perth in Australia next, where it's still summer. Lucky you. To say hello to owlet Anaya, who is 6. Her favourite story is The Bridgenorth Witch because she loves animals. She's drawn a very fun picture of Puss in Boots, complete with a bobble hat and very cute little pointy shoes with pom-poms at the end. What a lovely smile you've got, Anaya. Thanks for sharing your photo with us. And staying in Australia, let's go to Mittagong to greet owlets Bella, who is 8, and Annie, who is 5, who enjoy listening to Super Great Kids stories in the car. Bella and Annie's favourite story is The Hairy Toe. Well done for being brave. And finally, let's head to sunny Portugal in Europe to greet owlets Maggie, who is 7, and Bobby, who is 4, who've been owlets since September. They listen every week when they drive their dad to the station. Maggie loves the Baba Yaga stories and Bobby loves Stick Woman from the Indian Red Riding Hood story. They enjoy singing along with Toop, a ticky-tacky-tick, a ticky-tacky-tick. Well, you know the rest. They're both super brave and enjoy the scary stories the most. More owlet welcomes next week. Thanks for your patience. We'll say hello to you soon. And you've been sending in some marvellous pictures to Story Owl this week. Pictures of the Monk and the 3 Lucky Charms from Japan, Troll Mother and the Humans from Norway, Baba Yaga from Russia, and Anansi and the Magic Yams from the Caribbean. They're just a few which stood out. Our Pick of the Week Super Great Artist goes to 6-year-old Linnea from Red Hook in New York. Linnea has drawn a beautiful picture of the German story Star Coin, with the girl standing underneath a huge night sky with golden coins falling all around her. She's wearing a red stripy dress and she is simply beaming. We love your drawing, Linnea. A beautiful picture of a moving story. Thank you for sharing your drawing with us. If you'd like to send us a picture of your favourite story or of this week's story, Yeh-Hsien in her blue dress and cape of peacock feathers, send your picture as a JPEG attachment, please, via our website at supergreatkidstories.com, and we can share your art with other story lovers on our Facebook page, facebook.com/supergreatkidstories, and on our Instagram art gallery at supergreatkids_art. And thanks to all of you who are subscribing to our podcast. It's only £3 a month, that's less than $4, to get advert-free and access to the scary stories. And if you pay for the next tier up, you'll get advert-free plus over 45 bonus stories and at least 30 super great scary stories. Plus, you'll get access to our Super Great Kids Stories Express with short introductions, no adverts, purely story. Great for listening to stories back to back on long journeys. And did you know that you can now gift a Patreon membership? Visit our website for more details on supergreatkidstories.com. That's it for this week, unless you're an owlet, in which case we have an extra Valentine bonus story for you from a storyteller new to Super Great Kids Stories, Duncan Kelly, who lives in the beautiful English Lake District. And he's going to tell you a Valentine fairy tale from Norway and Sweden. Have a happy Valentine's Day if you're celebrating. And keep telling your stories and singing your songs. This podcast was produced at Wardour Studios in fabulous Fitzrovia in London.